Welcome to the Enabling Buying Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Kirch, and I'm grateful you're here. Enabling Buying is brought to you by Collavia.com, your all-in-one sales enablement platform. And we started the show to help anyone selling find a better way to drive impact in this busy marketplace where we're seeing more competition and noise than ever before. What is enabling buying? It's about speaking to the emotional needs of buyers. We earn trust. We choose human connection over automation. It's not about pushing them to buy. It's about pulling them in as they see you as a resource that can help them shine. It's time to enable buying in a world of selling. So today we're seeing a rise in the use of AI and automated outreach. Now, this can add efficiency and potentially scale efforts. However, there's the other side. We can't forget the importance of human connections. The overuse of automation and impersonal outreach, it's alienating. We need to draw potential buyers in. No one understands this better than today's guest, Doug Morneau. Doug is an AI execution architect and business strategist with more than 40 years of experience in helping companies grow, scale, and improve performance. He's worked with founders and leadership teams across North America and Europe, helping them identify operational bottlenecks, improve execution, and build systems that support sustainable growth. What makes Doug's perspective unique is that he approaches AI as an operator first, rather than chasing the latest tools or trends. He helps organizations diagnose the operational challenges that often prevent AI initiatives from delivering real results. His core belief is simple. AI doesn't fix broken systems, it scales them. Today, Doug works with mid-market companies to help reduce complexity, improve accountability, and create the operational foundation needed to leverage AI strategically and effectively. Please join me in welcoming Doug Morneau. Doug, welcome to the Enabling Buying Podcast. So good to see you, my friend.
Hey, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, man, it's been too long. You know, I've known each other for a few years, and I've just really been amazed at how you continue to not just reinvent yourself, but take your years of experience and kind of stack on and kind of expand in some new areas. And one of the areas that you're really embracing right now is enabling buying through using AI and some amazing technology. And I think a lot of our listeners out there are really interested in this space. And it's interesting what you're accomplishing already out of the gate. So you made a pretty big shift in direction. I mean, those that don't know, your background, you did a lot of email marketing and you've done a lot of other different things, but everything's kind of stacked on top of each other. Where are you today, and what's been kind of the motivation for the direction change?
Well, I look for opportunities like everybody else in business. And what I saw was that, obviously the move to AI. So about 3 years ago, I took my first formal course. And then since I've joined a couple of masterminds in that space. And I like it because it's disrupting the marketplace. So in my career, my biggest sales opportunities where I've made the most amount of money has been when the world is upside down and in chaos. And so taking a contrarian view, I tell people I like to step on the gas and hold the nitrous oxide button on at the same time and go real fast while everybody else is complaining, running and hiding. And so that's what I saw in the AI space was this huge influx of people coming in, flogging tools, and they're the same people that I saw that were Clubhouse experts, they were TikTok experts, they were everything else experts. And so for basically 40 years, I've worked as a business consultant, as a marketing consultant. And I didn't jump in right away formally until about a year ago, because I was looking, how do I play in this space without being like everybody else? So if you listen to guys, other podcasts like Christopher Lochhead's podcast, and he talks about being a category king or category queen. And that's when it kind of struck me. I thought, well, the same process that I took clients through for years as a fractional CMO is the same process that I take people through when they're exploring AI or automation. In that is really looking for the gap. Where's the opportunity? So I've always been tactic agnostic, meaning tools come last, strategy comes first. And so that's where I've planted my flag.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and you look at the landscape today, and you're 100% right. There's a lot of quote-unquote AI gurus, even though it's so early in the game that so very few people are actually established experts. But what I see in the people that claim to be experts, they're pushing tools. And
Yeah.
you and I both know that the landscape for tool adoption is changing like by the minute. Today it's Perplexity, tomorrow it's Claude, the next day it's maybe back to ChatGPT, and then Facebook is launching Llama and all these things. So if we're constantly chasing tools, it's hard to become proficient. It's hard to really maximize potential. You were smart. You actually said, "Look, I'm going to be tool agnostic in my approach." So that was a smart decision. What kind of was the driver behind that?
Well, that's the approach I took in the marketing space as well. So, yes, to your point, I've done a lot of email. And, I probably spent more money on advertising in third-party email lists than anybody else. I think my best sales year was, we did $16 million in sales just in email.
Mm.
So, again, I just looked at that and thought, well, how do we apply that to where the market's going, and what's the long game? To your point, every 5 seconds there's a new AI tool out there. And so while people are pushing tools, it's less about the tools and more about how does the tool help your business. So I always back up and go, let's deal with the business first. So if you think of your sales process, what are all the steps it takes for you to identify a prospect? Do you know your customer avatar well? Do you know what buying stage they're at? So back the bus up before we go running around doing things like, hey, let's get AI to post on social. Hey, let's get AI to do videos, and really come back to the foundation of where's my prospective customer? Where does he live? What does he eat? What podcasts does he listen to? What does he watch on Netflix? What books do they read? What charities are they involved in? Like all the things that you would do to identify as many attributes and characteristics for your prospect first. And then how do you walk into the buying process? And are there other problems in the buying process? So I worked with one company that I spent the first 6 or 8 weeks dealing with other problems in the business before sales. So they hired me to help sales. And what I noticed was there was conflict between the owner and the salespeople around how commissions were being paid, which is always an issue if you're a commission salesperson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then internally, the salespeople were over promising on customer service and their technical support, and technical support was overwhelmed. And so it would have just buried the business if we stepped on the gas hard and created a bunch of sales until we could figure out how do we best serve the buyer so the buyer keeps coming back, reduce tension within the organization, have the team pull together, and have the salesperson feel appreciated and make money.
Yeah, and you look at the landscape. I mean, there seems to be a lot of chaos, and it seems like your focus is going from chaos to clarity within organizations. We're talking about organizations that sell, that have business development teams, but I think it happens really across organizations. It seems like there's at least out of the gate when AI first came into the mix and people saw that they could really exact some change, save some time, maybe add some efficiencies. It seemed like there was a push for tools before the strategy. And to me, that seems backward thinking. Are you seeing that still happening? And how are you addressing that? Because it seems like that's really the problem, is that we're chasing the tools, not the strategy itself.
Oh yeah, it's happening, and I think it's being amplified because there's a million gurus that are selling you courses on how to be an AI consultant. And so you grab onto a tool. So the old saying is, if your only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, you'll approach every problem like a nail. So, back to when I was buying lots of media, did I just buy email? No, we did paid social, we did Google, we did MSN, we bought like across a very broad audience that suited our clients. So yeah, people are still flogging tools. The analogy I really like to try to get into people's head is think about the gold rush. So during the gold rush, everybody went, hey, gold rush. So I've heard a number of AI consultants go, hey, look, this is another gold rush. Going, great. I'm glad that you've identified the problem. Because in the gold rush, the only people who made money were the people selling the tools. The miners died early and broke. So if you were a saloon owner and selling food and girls and lodging, and you're selling picks and shovels, you were making all of the money. And so that's what I see happening now is this is the gold rush. So the people that are making the money are the people selling the tools. And to
Yeah.
your point, how many sets of tools do you want to learn to use? And then, is the tool set that you're using today going to still be relevant next week? So if you back out of that process and go, so what problems am I trying to solve in my buyer's journey, in my sales enablement, and then go look for the solution, that makes a lot more sense because now you're going into the solution with clarity. You can properly evaluate vendors, SaaS tools, design, build, like what's the best approach to get you from where you are to where you're going. And so I've just seen people take a very lazy approach. I think Gary Vaynerchuk said, marketers ruin everything. And I totally disagree with him. I would say that lazy marketers ruin everything.
I think that's 100% it. And I think there's a real issue here that's happening, I think, in the sales world. We're seeing so much saturation of information out there. The noise is greater now than it probably ever has been. And arguably a lot of that's due to automated outreach and people using AI to formulate messages. And I think we have a lot of people tuning out those messages. CRMs, slide decks, inboxes. Sales teams don't need more scattered tools. They need alignment. Collavia brings your sales playbook, AI coaching, training, and goals together in one platform for consultative B2B teams looking to close more deals with less confusion and greater consistency. Collavia, enabling buying in a world of selling. Visit Collavia.com. Now, I would say AI isn't necessarily replacing that human connection. In fact, I think it's more important. That human connection is more important now than ever, and I think it's going to become more so. But I do think AI is maybe exposing how important it is that we understand what that means to connect at a human level. Because as people are tuning out the messages, we need to find a way to capture their attention. So can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of what's working within the sales world right now, where the problems really lie? Because I think that there's some hurdles that people are facing by trying to take the human element out of the upfront top of funnel introductions.
Yeah, again, I think it comes back to lazy people. So lazy in general. I'll just go into AI and say, hey, create me an article for SEO on this topic, or find me these prospects. So what I'm seeing is that people are still using the tools in a lazy way. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. So if you think about, we only have so much time, and the best use of our time, if we're in sales, which everybody is in sales, is spending time in front of your ideal prospect.
Yeah.
So if you're going to automate something, don't automate the thing that closes the sale. Automate all the grunt work and all the ugly stuff, all the data manipulation and analytics and sales process, and maybe even creating unique messages for people that are at a different stage in their buyer's journey. So often we think about, well, hey, everybody's ready to buy. Well, that's 3%, as you know, that's 3% of the people are ready to buy now. Well, what about the other 97%? What about the people who are buyer aware, who realize they have a problem and are just starting to look? So I think that's where you can leverage the tools and the automation that AI provides now to do a better job, to show up to a meeting better informed, to understand the challenges, the problems that your buyer has. And one of my favorite questions on a personal note when I'm using AI is, I like to ask it, what are all the thoughts that are running through my prospects' minds right now? What are the things that are keeping them awake that they're too afraid of or too embarrassed to ask me? So is AI perfect? No, AI is not perfect, but I'm also not giving it full control. Yeah. I'm still driving the bus, but I'm using it to create information that I can digest and use to show up better for my prospects.
I remember when I was in one of my first sales roles, I remember Back then, you could get away with asking it. You could literally ask somebody, "Hey, what's keeping you up at night?" But that question became so pervasive, and everybody started using it to the point where it was like kind of like an instant red flag when
Yeah.
somebody heard that. But I
And
love
they,
that
and
idea
people
that you
lie,
can.
right?
But yeah,
Let's not
exactly.
forget
But I
that
love the
they
fact
lie. Yeah.
you can go into AI and get some ideation, things that you're just not thinking of. That's where I think the real power is. And one of the things that you and I have talked about is the noise in the marketplace. But are there other ways AI can help sales, making sales and buying easier than instead of just making it louder? Because I think the noise in the marketplace is something we can't ignore. But how
Yep.
do we make the AI tools work for us in our favor beyond what you just stated?
Well, if you think about what the basic tool set, so pick your poison for what you want to use for a personal AI tool. It can digest and assimilate and search, way faster than 100 humans sitting in a room. So that's, I think, the big opportunity is think outside the box. I'll give you some. I promise you I wouldn't go into the tool stuff, but I'll give you some examples of things that I've done with AI for my own business. So, we have an election. Both our countries have an election. So I would ask it things like, what industries are going to flourish and grow if the Republicans get in versus the Democrats? What investments are likely to be most affected? What industries are most likely to be affected? If they put this new law in or pass this new bill, how's that going to affect my customers? So now I've got intelligence out there giving me some feedback. Is it 100% right? I don't think so, but it's a lot better than I could do. And so it gives me some visibility into, what are your customers struggling with? And like you said, we used to ask that question, what keeps you up at night? And I think people lie. What they won't say is, I'm afraid to look irrelevant. I'm afraid to make a mistake. I might get fired. I have imposter syndrome. Those aren't things that people readily share. They're going to share the BS like, oh, I don't know if this fits in our budget or timeline, or we're looking at other vendors. Well, I want to translate that into what's the real problem, and then how can I respectfully address that issue and leave room for the prospect to not feel threatened, intimidated, or manipulated, but to feel that I'm genuinely interested in who they are, what problems they have, and how I can solve them, opposed to coming up with a slick new sales piece and then shoehorn them into something that's not going to work.
Yeah, I love that. And your exercise, you talked about identifying those areas that maybe are going to be impacted by the election. That's really powerful information for a company that's maybe looking to define a niche or understand areas of opportunity. Okay,
Yep.
so this area over here, they're going to be hurting in the next period.
Sure.
How do we help address that? So this is the kind of intel that salespeople really need to be focused on, not the features and benefits. I mean, we all fall in love with our own products and services, and we're out there talking about the things that are easy to talk about. They're the things like, oh, we created this new feature in our tool. It's like you push this button and it'll save so much time. That's not what people are buying. They're buying that emotional pain. They're buying that, how is this person going to help me? And as you stated, how does this person understand me? Because I like to take the wind out of people's sails, because I know that if you wear a sales title, people love to just dismiss you. It's like, okay, I'd like to get this guy off the phone as quickly as possible, but if
Yep.
I beat them to the punch on something that I know they're struggling with because I've done my homework and I have a solution, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe I need to listen to this person because they can help me.
Yeah. And so, at the risk of sliding into some of the tool stuff, technology that exists now that didn't exist before is like, I love direct mail. So here we are talking about AI, and I'm going to talk about licking stamps and writing on envelopes. So there are tool sets that you can use that we can put into your sales process, where if a prospect visits your selling page on your website and doesn't convert, that at the end of the day, a handwritten letter gets in the mail to them. Hey, Paul, thanks for stopping by, fill in the blank. Noticed you spent, a couple minutes looking through this, and this. Obviously, you have some more questions. So that technology didn't exist before. So not only can I capture their phone number, their address, their business information, their social media, but I can have it automatically generate a piece of mail. So is that for everybody? No, it's definitely not for when you're selling low ticket item. You're selling a $25, $100, maybe even $1,000 item, not a fit. But for people with a longer buyer's journey, I would say look at the tool sets that are out there, look at who your customers are, look at what your competition's doing, and look for a way to differentiate yourself. So I always used to come back to Dan Kennedy stuff and say, what's your USP? And people go, well, I don't have a unique selling proposition. I said, then I can't help you. Right?
Yeah. Right.
I do it. Everybody else does. Well, okay. Good service isn't a USP. So, when I pick up my phone and I go to make a phone call, I wouldn't say that AT&T is giving me customer service when I push the button and the call goes through. That's the minimum standard that I'm paying for. So what can you do up and above that your competition is not doing? So, are there things you could do with using technology to make your prospect's life better? Maybe it's an add-on to something that you're doing with your tool. Maybe it's access to data that they currently don't have access to. Maybe it's automation around, where you are on the project that you're working for with them. So again, it really comes down to, I would say, shut off the computer, figure out who your ICP is, figure out what your USP is, and then look at what your sales process is to move them from, hey, I've just heard of you, to here's a wire transfer.
Everything we've talked about is really about how do we qualify, how do we attract, how do we earn trust. Those are all great things, but there's a reality to selling, and I think there's some ways AI can really help us maybe almost screen buyers out instead of just qualifying them. Because think about how much time is wasted in organizations chasing a lead that's never going to be the ideal. You said ideal client profile. That's so powerful. You have to know that. But what can we do to maybe wean some of these people out instead of just trying to qualify them? Because I think that's where AI really has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I mean, in my own work for myself, I use that all the time. So I grew my LinkedIn. I didn't grow it properly, but I grew it to, I don't know, about 25,000-ish connections. And so that sounds good. That's a good vanity ego number, but that's a problem. Just, that's as much as a problem of only having 10 people, because I can't possibly talk to 25,000 people. And those people aren't my ideal target audience. So once I know what my ICP is, and I have it clearly mapped out, then I can take my LinkedIn data. I can download my LinkedIn data. I can enhance that data so I get a bigger view of the client. And then I can filter it to filter out everybody else who's not my ICP. And then I can spend my time focusing on getting my offer in front of the right people, opposed to going, okay, I got 25,000 people. Let's see, I could download the list. That'd be lazy, and just put it into a cold email program, and I could just blast the heck out of everybody and hope that somebody buys. Well, that's bad for a whole bunch of reasons. We talked about earlier before we went on air about, people going into the promotion and spam folder.
Yeah.
So, that's the wrong approach. The better approach would be find me 100 profiles that are my absolute best customer. Show me the companies or the industries that are likely to be that are long-term sales cycle, a year. Show me the people that are 6 months. Show me the people that are 30 days. Show me people that are 90 days, based on the global data that AI has available to pull. And then how do we communicate with those people to make sure that our offer and our conversations are in alignment with how they want to receive information? People want to get phone calls? Do the people want to see in their office? Do the people want to get a text? Do the people, I'm surprised at how many messages, I get messages everywhere. It's like, okay, so you reached out to me on Instagram. Instagram for me isn't a communication tool that way where Paul, you and I are going to have a conversation. Facebook Messenger, yeah, maybe, but again, less business and more personal. So,
Right.
it comes back to where are your people? Use technology to enhance your ability to communicate with each of your prospects. So if you had 100 prospects in the room, you'd have 100 different ways that people like to communicate. So use technology to serve them where they are, opposed to, well, our company uses XYZ CRM and we send out a quarterly newsletter and then that's our marketing. Well, now you're treating everybody as if they're exactly the same, and we know they're not.
Yeah, and it's amazing how I hate to narrow down a platform, but LinkedIn has become the go-to for business outreach, and arguably for a lot of good reasons. But I remember when I would see people with these massive networks, 15, 20,000 people, I thought, oh my gosh, that's what I need. That's what I need. Well, I have probably 20,000 followers on LinkedIn or very close to it.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
larger it's gotten, the less valuable LinkedIn is on its own. So everything you described, like using Sales Navigator, qualifying and finding your ICPs, because I guarantee there are a lot of people in my LinkedIn network that are not ever going to do business with me. And I know that. And sometimes I communicate with those people. I think so many people underutilize that platform and misuse it. And I will tell you that another area, as we were talking, and you said, you were talking about some ways to not, disqualify people or weed them out. I think back to, I used to pull up to a meeting out in the parking lot on my phone, on my BlackBerry, or whatever device I had, trying to look up and do some research before I go into that meeting, trying to find, oh, did this guy speak at an event or anything like that I can reference? I used to try and do that before in the office and all that. And it was so much harder than with AI. We can research people and find out what's going on within the company news, and find out information that before was so difficult to come from. I mean, are you using it in that capacity as well?
absolutely. And one step further, I mean, I use it to try to assess people, and I don't mean this in a creepy way, but try to assess their personality style. So, there's, I've done all sorts of stuff myself personally for personal growth, personal style indicator, disc, all those So, in that situation is real simple. Everybody has a default style. And the challenge is, at least for me, I can't speak for your audience, is style shifting. So I'm a very type A driven, contrarian, aggressive approach to business. Well, that doesn't work for somebody who is more conservative, more reserved, wants to see spreadsheets and wants to see a 20-page report. So the easiest way to style shift is identify your style of the person you're going to talk to. So again, LinkedIn. I can scrape your stuff off of LinkedIn. I can write the proper prompts. I can figure out what your style is. And then because there's 4 main styles, I can now create sales processes and sales and marketing collateral and communications, outreach, and follow-up based on every profile style. So if there's only 4, you got 100 people on your list, I don't know where they're going to fall, how many are type A, B, or C, or D, whatever it is, but you're armed with that. And so it might not be award winning, but at least you've made the effort. And I can probably with confidence guarantee that your competition aren't taking the time to figure that out.
Yeah, I love that. And Doug, I want to be respectful of your time. I told you we'd keep this under 30 minutes, and this has been such a great conversation. I know you and I could talk for hours, and we have. In fact,
Yes,
on the last conversation we had, you said something that I wrote down, and I wanted to read this statement and get your final thoughts. So one of the things you said is most companies are asking how AI can help them sell more.
Yeah.
But the better question is how AI can help buyers make clear, lower risk, more confident decisions. We've been talking a lot about the seller.
Yep.
Can you close on that piece? Because I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. The big part is figuring out the buyer's journey. So where is the buyer, and meet them there. So I'll give you not a necessarily a great example, but an example. So we're at a point where we want to buy a vehicle. My wife wants a new vehicle. So I tell her, hey, look, go on to Consumer Report. You've got a thing, pick out the vehicle you want. And so she does all the research. So in that case, none of the TV ads, radio ads, ads that followed us on social media after she looked at all the car dealer websites were helpful. She started with Consumer Report. So is Consumer Report, are your clients or prospects, could some of them be starting there? And if they're starting there, should you maybe start a conversation then when they're doing their initial research? And should you advertise there, or could you advertise there? And then what's the next step? The next step is the meeting. So I think we need to take a back up and take a broader view and try to picture how our customers like to buy. And then we need to meet them there and serve them there, and they will give us great references and great recommendations, because we're not treating them all the same. So, I don't think any of this is rocket science. It just means slow down. Don't rush the technology. We're people. People are buying. Like if you're selling to computers, that's different, but we're not. We've got people that have, all the same problems that we have.
Yeah.
So that's how I think we look at the buyer, determining how they buy. What are all the steps? Do they go to their accountant for advice? Do they go to their lawyer for advice? What are all the steps and hoops they're going to have to go through? Like you would know that as a sales guy. You don't want to talk to the receptionist if you want them to lease new office space. Now, if you're going to put a water cooler in the office, well, the receptionist is probably the one who makes that decision. And I'm not putting down the receptionist. I'm just saying that's her level of responsibility, is keep the office going. And then there's the office manager, and then there's the owner. So it's about identifying the buyer and then identifying the steps they go through. So in that example, how many executives, C-level executives, are looking to buy your product or service? How do they do that? Does John or Jane at night go on their computer and do the research? Or do they come into the office in the morning and say to the EA, hey, I'm looking at implementing AI, or I'm looking at implementing fill in the blank with your service. Could you do some research? So, her emotions and her thinking and her processes are different than yours. So Paul, your example might be, hey, my services it's $100,000 a year mastermind. And so for somebody who's making $75,000 a year, that's outrageous. So how do you get onto her radar without her dismissing you? And her boss, who's pulling down, say, for argument's sake, $1 million a year, he's thinking $100,000 for a mastermind. If I can increase my sales by 25%, that's a 2.5 times return. But so there's the buyer's journey. So it started with somebody else before you even got the decision maker. And if all you're doing is chasing that executive, you're, the old book, blood on the streets, or blue ocean strategy, you're where everybody else is. So back up the bus and figure out what their entire buyer's journey looks like. Where do they get advice? And yeah, I don't think it's difficult. You're a smart guy. Your audience, I'm sure, understands this. So hopefully there's been something in there they can take away.
Amazing. But I want to just kind of close it with a couple things. I mean, you kind of alluded to the fact without saying it directly, but I mean, it's like fishing for a great white shark in a freshwater pond. You got to go where your audience is. That $75,000 mastermind, you're not going to sell it to the guy who's making $100,000 a year. So know your audience, know your worth. I think that's the other piece of it. I just want to thank you, Doug. I mean, so many things that you and I've could continue to talk about. We may have to have a further conversation, but Doug Morneau, thanks again for being on the Enabling Buying podcast, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks so much, Paul. Great to see you again, my friend. Next time, hopefully we're doing what we did last time we met. We're eating some ribs and sipping some beers.
That sounds like a great idea. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers.